Thanks so much, Vicki, and welcome to everyone. And we're really excited this evening for our speaker, who's our very own Captain Hoffmann. And Captain Hoffmann is a lifelong sailor and former academic who became an offshore mariner in earnest following his career with the U.S. Department of State. He is an experienced sailor, instructor, and ocean navigator with over 30,000 miles under the keel. Following retirement in 2003, Hans worked primarily as an offshore captain for the Maryland School of Sailing and Seamanship in Rock Hall, Maryland. For the school, he completed at least 20 DELMARVA circumnavigations, and he's voyaged on 32-foot, 40-foot, and 45-foot island packet sailboats, and also on over 100-foot schooners and brigantines for the Los Angeles Maritime Institute. So we're looking forward to see how Hans, how you work these DELMARVAs, how to keep us safe, and all the details there. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'm turning it over to you, Hans.
Hey, I am looking at to share my screen here. Okay, the screen is coming up. Yvonne, is it coming in clear?
Yeah, it looks wonderful.
Okay, good. So DELMARVA circumnavigation, I should begin by saying that in many ways, CAPCA member and former president Marion DeGraw had first piqued my interest in DELMARVA circumnavigation, because when I took my when I sat for my captain's license courses at the Baltimore Community College, she was one of the instructors, and one of her lessons was how to make a navigation plan, and she used the DELMARVA circumnavigation as her example, and I will bring her up a little later on. I will my clicker is not responding. So what I will be talking about is a preparation of vessel crew and preparing a navigation plan, execution of the plan, namely the crew follows the plan, they monitor the weather, they respond to changing circumstances. And all of this is done as a training cruise for what I call student crew, individuals who are already experienced sailors. And in our case, the Maryland School, often prepared to go offshore, either to go to Bermuda or to the Caribbean. And we know from emails and letters and calls that they indeed are living their dream. And so we try our very best to give them the tools that they need to be successful offshore, confident, and also safety conscious. And that's what I'm trying to do, build confidence, as I'm seeing, confidence and safety consciousness. And my goal is also for the student crew to have fun. The way we begin here is with, once the students have been accepted into the and have enrolled and been accepted by the head of the school, I send them what I call a welcome letter, which points out what it is we are going to do, including a call for a Zoom meeting ahead of our class together, where we actually are going through various steps of the preparation, and I give assignments. The vessels that we use at present as the IP40 Navigator, and previously we have used my boat, the Island Packet 440, and we have also gone around with Island Packet 32s, smaller boats, and students are fully in charge with the captain supervising. For them, for the student crew to be capable to assist the captain in running the boat, we are very particular in terms of preparation. First, dockside. We spent a whole day dockside training where we deploy the sails, we go over the boat, we go over safety equipment, and we actually practice deploying the safety equipment. Here there's the offshore main overboard system and the horseshoe buoy down below. And we also deploy, while we are still dockside, the equipment that they need to be familiar with. In this case, it's a whisker pole. And then the first day underway is really a training day underway. In this case here, we actually show how the whisker pole functions with the sails fully deployed, just as one of many examples. We also spend time to go over the resources that are helpful and indeed necessary to be successful circumnavigators. And I draw the students' attention to the NGA website, Maritime Safety Information, because here they can find what they need, at least for the time being. I take them to the chart number 1, to the light list, the coast pilot, and also the local notice to mariners. And as I proceed here through my presentation, I'll give you examples as to how often we were saved by having looked ahead of time at the coast pilot or the local notice to mariners and the light list. And when I say saved, there were some rather difficult or challenging situations. I will come to some of them, but just to give you a little heads up, there was live firing off at the Marine Corps landing base at Little Creek. There was live firing off Patuxent River air station. There were Walpole Island. There were rockets being launched, and we were not able to proceed. All of that information is available if you check the proper resources ahead of time. Then what we do, we look at the entire cruise and we set particular waypoints, and students are here's the chart, for instance, of the Chesapeake Bay, and students are then actually entering the waypoints into the logbook one by one in sequence. Other student crew members will look at the waypoint. Let's say there are particular marks or buoys. They will look at the light list and see whether it's actually are there, what the characteristics are. And then we look at the local notice to mariners to see whether the lights are on station and watching properly, just as one example. And any remarks that we gather from looking at the coast pilot go into the logbook as well. The second day out, the students take turns, the student crew takes turns practicing what they will have to do as watchstanders underway. And that is following the navigation plan and communicating using proper signals, using proper language, and realize that this navigation plan can be eminently useful. I give you one example. Just before the COVID hit in 2019, our vessel, I was not the captain at the time, was entering the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal. We'll talk about that canal in a minute. And the vessel and the lightning strike nearby fried all electronics of the vessel. This is the second time that a vessel in our fleet was actually so afflicted. And in this case, the crew first made sure that the vessel was safe, that the crew was safe, that the vessel was still seaworthy. They turned around, and one would think it's very easy to follow the simply the buoys, in this case, the upper Chesapeake Bay. But if there is haze, if there is inclement weather, or once you get to the area of the chart approaches to Baltimore, the infinite number of buoys can be extremely disorienting, especially if you are still recovering from the shock of having just been hit by lightning. So having the navigation plan and just steering a reciprocal course was very reassuring and calmed everybody on board. Then in the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal, we stopped at Summit North Marina. We have built in 1 day for weather delays, and we actually had to use it a number of times. We all look at the weather, we make an analysis and determination, and I myself always like to go offshore with a front just having moved through, because the wind conditions are very, very lively and it makes for good sailing. Then I repeat my request to the student crew to check the coast pilot. As one example, when we leave Summit North Marina, here you have the Conroy Lift Bridge. The Conroy Lift Bridge has 3 particular levels of lift that one has to request. This level is 45 feet, so you better be aware of your air draft to determine whether as a sailboat you can safely pass under the bridge. The coast pilot also tells you, that's coast pilot number 3, tells you what the current is, namely the flood sets east and the ebb sets west. It tells you about the speed, the average speed, but also if there is wind, that the average speed is about 2.5 knots, but that depending on wind conditions, the speed can of the current can be as high as 3 and 3.5 knots, which is particularly critical when you leave the C&D Canal at Reedy Point. So we check all that ahead of time, and I alert student crew of potential pitfalls. In this case, that if we use the electronics, that students need to zoom in or zoom out. Some of you may remember our speaker before the pandemic on electronic navigation, who alerted us to the pitfalls, and also to the fact that if you use a NOAA chart, a flat chart, you have both the perspective and you have the detail. When you zoom in, you have detail. When you zoom out, you only have the larger perspective. And that can be a problem when you, anytime when you close in with a shoreline or a harbor. But in this case, this is a photo from the Coast Pilot number volume 3. You see the Reedy Point exit of the C&D Canal. And right here, if you can see my pointer, there's the junction buoy for a secondary channel that goes north parallel to the coastline. And our navigation plan includes a progression that keeps us in mid-canal until we have this junction buoy abeam before we alter course and go downriver. And we are going clockwise because for our training purposes, that is the most advantageous one, and I can elaborate. Priscilla and I had a good conversation on that. To highlight the dangers that can occur, the tides and the currents can be such that these breakwaters that you see here, the southern and the northern one, can be awash. And a sailing couple on an island packet known to us at in the school, unfortunately misjudged their progression, ran into this breakwater right here, and actually sank and destroyed their boat, which is a really pity, and we try to avoid. So then, as we go down the Chesapeake, the Delaware River, and later on Delaware Bay, we already do our watch standing routine. We leave very early in the morning so that student crew will get into their routine during daylights and can ask questions, make adjustments, and also study ahead of time where and and have a navigation plan ahead of time as to where they want to enter the ocean. Should it be Cape Henlopen down here, or should they be wait for better weather here at Cape May? And that is important because, as Marianne de Groot told us in 2003 in that class, you also have to plan for your bailout in case weather conditions change. And our bailout that I have the crew include in their plan is here on the left side, the west side, the harbor of refuge right off Cape Henlopen. And we study the advantages. There are only advantages because here you are protected against easterly and northeasterly, but here you're really protected against wind direction from all points. So that that is a very important lesson. And then of course you have loose if you need to enter there in order to make repairs or have a longer layover. You have that as a bailout as well. Then I have students, because many of them will go offshore into other countries. I alert them to the Corex line right here. I explain to them, and they can read up in the Coast Pilot here, the territorial sea line. Here, the thin black line is the 3-mile offshore line, and they need to know why that is important under Coast Guard regulations. And then we have to decide where do we enter the ocean. And since we have, I explained, since we have the traffic separation scheme here, it is to our advantage to leave all that traffic safely to our beam, and we enter here at green 5, flashing green 2.5 seconds gong. That's this light right here, and we stay between this gong and hen and chicken's shoal, the 20-foot line, and then proceed down alongside the outbound traffic separation scheme. That is to me as captain an advantage, because here now, by this time it's already nightfall. I can take some rest. Students can actually sail and tack the boat as long, and these are the captain's standing orders, they have to stay west of the traffic separation zone, marked, by the way, by yellow buoys, lighted buoys, and the longitude line, which I will write down for them. And as long as they honor these boundaries, they can tack without having to wake me up. At our turning mark here, now it will toward Cape Charles, which we will discuss in a minute. We will already have nightfall, and this is very awe-inspiring to student crew who have never sailed at night. And at that point, I am either on deck in the cockpit. If the weather is foul, I'll sleep in the cockpit if I have to rest a little. But I'll be there, and I can hear their chatter and their talk. And ahead of time, they will have practiced man overboard. And I never practiced man overboard in the DELMARVA circumnavigation on the ocean. But when I do go offshore to do distance voyaging, we do man overboard on the ocean. But we do it inshore. We do a nighttime man overboard. We do it, but in protected waters inshore. Then they will have studied ahead of time the shore lights, for instance, Chincoteague light or Assateague light, and they know their light sequence, and they are then checking the light sequence. And once they have determined what light we are having a beam, this becomes an LOP, and they mark their progression actually on the track on the chart that has been entered on the chart. And so they know, and of course I know, where we are at that particular point. Here is the chart 12,200, Cape May to Cape Hatteras, further south, not shown here. But this chart distance we will traverse at night and arrive here at Cape Charles in the evening. The reason why I want to be awake and alert in this region here at night, the Reed will fishing fleet, Menhaden fishing fleet, is very active out there, and that can be very disorienting, even if you can read the lights properly of vessels engaged in fishing. They constantly alter course, and they will not respond to your radio call. So we have to find ways to escape the fleet activity, and that can be sometimes quite trying. Then as we approach the Chesapeake Bay entrance, I go to chart 12,221, which gives us all the details that we want. When I come from the northeast, I use the North Channel, which I will discuss in a minute. There are 3 options for us to enter the Chesapeake Bay. This is very heavy with, as we all know, with traffic inbound and outbound, and I try to avoid it. When I come from Bermuda or the Caribbean or from the Bahamas, I choose this approach here, going into a little creek that I've mentioned before. But we need to be aware there is a lot of military traffic, which has its own regulations that are very clearly announced as the distance that we have to keep, and how we can proceed or not proceed. A closer look to the North Channel then. Here, red none 2 flashing red for seconds is our approach buoy. The Coast Pilot 3 is very clear that in storm conditions, or after having had storm conditions, these buoys, these are all unlighted buoys right here, going up toward the bridge. They can be off station. They're often destroyed, and the light list will tell you that. And so what we do, we have the navigator down at the nav station and monitoring our progress, making sure that we are passing as close to the unlighted buoys. It may already be dark here, depending on the time of year, and that we are progressing and are not running aground here on any of these nearby shoals. We then proceed to toward the bridge. We need to make a turn because I want to make sure that the student crew not only is aware that there are 2 bridges that we are crossing, but rather that they can look through both bridges, make sure there is no traffic, which is most often the Reedville fishing fleet that I've mentioned before, and also be aware that there are navigation lights that will assist our progress, but the navigation lights are overhead. They are right here, and they're right here, and the same on the northern bridge of the 2. They hang down 5 feet from the lowest bridge girder. We line up on them here and back there, and as we progress, we look back and use these as an aft range to make sure that the current, which sometimes can be very strong, does not set us off to either to the east or west. I mentioned that the local notice to mariners sometimes saved the day. At one point, I was approaching this particular bridge. Local notice to mariners told us that the vertical range had been decreased by 10 feet because bridge painting was in progress and the scaffolding extended down 10 feet from the lowest bridge girders. And I knew that I had sufficient air draft that we could pass even with the bridge painting job progressing. However, there had been gale force winds ahead of time, and all the OSHA required canvas to capture debris from the work up there had been blown down. So I realized all of a sudden that the vertical clearance was reduced by a factor of X, which I did not know, except that one particular panel on both sides were still in place. So I took the wheel and I narrowed and I made it just between those two panels going, and we were able to clear the bridge. So looking at the local notice to mariners is essential, but that doesn't mean that you won't have surprises, as I've been able to show here. Then, yeah. Then as we progress further up the bay, as another bailout point, we go, if we are not going into Norfolk Little Creek, we go and pick Cape Charles Harbor, which has, and we do that because it presents challenges that the student crew might encounter overseas or in other environs. And so we pick this very challenging approach for a reason, so that the students have that experience. Having said that, I'm coming back to the approach in a minute. Depending on whether we have also bypassed any landfall at the Chesapeake Bay entrance in order to avoid and escape the perimeter winds of an approaching hurricane, and we have gone as far as Solomon's Island, and in one instance even all the way up to Annapolis. We like to, and this is up to the students, we tell them we include one overnight segment of the DELMARVA circumnavigation, but the students have the choice, and they can take a vote whether they want to go up the Chesapeake Bay at night, which is, which, as we all know, has its own challenges, and more often than not, the students will choose going at night. But I'm making it clear, if we vote, if it's not a unanimous vote, if one person favors a daytime progression, then that vote counts, and we go only during the daytime. But back to our approach here to Chesapeake Harbor. As let's see whether I have another chart here. Yeah. So as we approach here, if you continue the red arrow along the shoreline here, we follow the depth contours up to Chesapeake Harbor, and the 30-foot line to the east to avoid both the crab pots, but also this very dangerous hazard here. It's the Plantation Flat Slide. It's well lit, but only the coast pilot or local knowledge will tell you that the light is surrounded by remnants of the screw pile base for a lighthouse that has long been destroyed and is long gone. So what we do, we navigate by depth contour. We aim for this green light, which is green CC, standing for Cherrystone Channel. flashing green 2.5 seconds, keeping the depth contours, 30-foot depth contour to our starboard until we can look all the way into the Cherrystone Channel approach. And here we have range A. This is the front light, this is the rear light. And the Coast Pilot 3 tells you, and the light list will tell you what the true direction of that range is. So the students don't even have to measure it. They just get the true direction of the light list. And we proceed up to this turning mark right here. From this turning mark on, however, we need to realize that this was range A, that range B is not just a straight shot, because here at red 9, I think this is 6, yeah, red 9 6, and this is green can 5. The channel actually veers to the port by about 6 degrees, and it is very shallow here. And unless we can identify these marks at night, we have often made nightfall at night, then we have the shoal to worry about. So what we do is we have the navigator again following our progress on the chart plotter and communicating with the cockpit crew. I have 2 lookouts at this point, one on port side and one on starboard, for the final approach into Chesapeake Harbor, to make sure that we see those 2 lights that I have mentioned, those 2, green, red 6 and green 5, and then make our course adjustment. And the navigator gives us the courses as well, and we follow the navigator's instruction and that's point with the lookouts communicating with the helm and the captain. Also, if I have an opportunity, I'll show the student crew the layout of Chesapeake Harbor, which is a delightful little town up here. But I'm showing this here for a different reason. This area where you now see my arrow has all been built up with beautiful marina structures. In the past, this was all there was as a Chesapeake Harbor landfall destination for us. This is beautiful, all built up. One night I arrived, and the lookout to port said, there are docks in front of us. The light list did not show anything. So they had been building and constructing this, what ultimately was a beautiful marina. And when I complained to the harbor master the next day, oh, we were going to put it into the local notice to mariners next week. So there, the lookouts really saved the day, because having checked the light list alone was not sufficient. Here we often rest overnight. Students are and the captain too are pretty exhausted, but the next day we make the navigation plan up the bay, asking ourselves how to proceed, especially if we happen to leave in the afternoon following our arrival and go up the bay at night. And we need to, and the student crew needs to be aware of potential hazards. And the hazards are, as we all know, the ocean-going vessels, the big ones, including the periodic passenger vessels going to Baltimore, are traveling here. This is the York Channel at great speed. And if I have to rest approaching this area, I have standing orders for the, if I don't see any vessel and don't hear any vessel traffic, I might just rest because we still have a great distance to go. And the standing orders were stay west of the York Channel. But the student crew is still learning, and and it is difficult for them or challenging to ascertain which vessels are coming up from here and actually in their direction or coming down. So one night, the crew called up, "Captain, there's a ship." And if you are this close to a vessel, that's not good. This is a photo from the C&D Canal, not from our encounter that night. But what is a fact for all of us who all of a sudden are being awakened at night, it takes a while to get oriented. So I was totally disoriented. So where are we? Why are we here? The standing orders had kept us away, but the students had adjusted course and had not kept track of their progression sufficiently to realize that they were closing with the York Spit Channel. And so in this case, we were able to tack away safely, and there was no imminent danger. The vessel must have determined that there would be clear passage, because they didn't call us, they didn't hail us on 16 or 13, the dual channel, and they didn't use their emergency signal. But it was very disconcerting. What is also disconcerting to a captain, if a student crew or any passenger or crew member plays with the chart plotter and changes the orientation. I always keep north up rather than course up. And there are mariners who prefer course up for reasons that they can explain perhaps, but we make the point north up always. And if you wake up at night as a captain and somebody has been playing with the plotter and everything is turned around, it takes a while to get reoriented, and that's really to be avoided. That's something that after that happened the first time, I make a point that that students really have to make the effort to avoid that. So then we proceed, and the next challenging part of the Chesapeake Bay is here. Many of you know this area. That's Smith's Point with its own traffic separation scheme. And by that point, we have made the decision to stay well off the traffic. I don't go inshore of the traffic separation scheme unless I have to. And I stay out here, with everybody realizing that tugboats and tugs and barges, they take their own route. So we may encounter tugs and barges in this area, but we can see them from, and their speed is less than those ocean-going vessels, and so we can make adjustments in time. And we will always make bridge-to-bridge safe passage calls, which is a good experience for the student crew to have. And by staying clear of that traffic, we can also relax and really enjoy coming up the Chesapeake Bay. And whenever we have an opportunity to sail, we actually do sail. And then the next point is a charming one. The next point is a charming one. It could be either, if we sail through the night, we arrive right here at a lighthouse that we all remember very well, at Annapolis nearby. But you have a lot. There's the Annapolis anchorage. You have vessels already underway, and students need to study the lights that they see on these vessels and determine, is this vessel, or are these vessels anchored, or are they underway? But by that time, they've all become pretty adept at not only sailing, navigating, but also identifying vessels and their progression. And so by this time, everybody is relaxed and looking forward to final landfall. There it is. This is again the current offshore boat, the IP40 Navigator. And yeah, if you arrive early, we'll have a beer together. Otherwise, everybody packs up and says goodbye. But we stay in touch, as I've mentioned at the beginning. Following the DELMARVAs and following my 108s, I get emails, I get messages, and really for years to come afterwards, and it's very enjoyable. And I get them from various parts of the world except Asia, but as far as the Pacific, certainly the Med and Latin America and the Caribbean. And one student even attempted the Northwest Passage, and I don't know, never heard whether he and his crew finally made it or not, but he certainly, by the time he made his plans, I thought he was ready for it. So Yvonne and fellow captains, that's what I have for now. Yvonne, I think I kept within the time limit you gave me. And
oh my gosh, that was amazing. You sure did. And it looks like, and then you got a lot of nice comments here in the chat. So some Chris J says he's really enjoying this, and Priscilla says she likes your practical examples. And then Chris J says, if you are going up the bay from Cape Charles at night, is it usually by sail or motor? Of course, the wind is a key factor, but what I mean is, do you have a preference, sail or power, for safety?
Okay, well, that's certainly an appropriate question. And in our case, if I find that that by this time students are still apprehensive, they have said, yeah, I'd be happy to go up at night, but the winds are shifty or the winds are too high. What can we do? I might motor sail. But since the question was preference, we are a school of sailing and seamanship. So we teach both. And whenever we have an opportunity, as I've demonstrated, I hope, but if ever I have an opportunity to sail, I sail. What I do if I find I have a student who is a bit apprehensive, I put the apprehensive student as my watchmate. There's 6 of us, and so we have 3 watches. We can either go 4 hours on, 8 hours off, but I can increase the exposure to more experience by going 6 on and 6 off. And if I find there's a student who is apprehensive, I have that student join me on my watch, and hopefully I can reassure the students and help to build confidence. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does. Priscilla was curious if you've ever had to seek refuge because of very strong winds, or have you been able just to sort of make your way through reefing, whatever?
Yeah, Priscilla. I've taken from the time Marianne de Graw taught us that lesson. I have included that in my planning every single time. I always have a bailout. In this particular, in my series of DELMARVA circumnavigations, all I had to do is delay. Either delay right at the beginning, or delay at Summit North Marina, or if approaching weather forced us to make decisions, I've gone all the way through, all the way to either Solomons or all the way up to Annapolis. And so in that case, Priscilla, that could be considered a refuge. But other captains had to bail out and seek refuge. I had to seek refuge during some of my offshore passages, ocean passages. But on the DELMARVA ones, no. But I take a very close look at and have. I'm very familiar now with the harbor of refuge, quote unquote, as it is charted north of Cape Henlopen. I also have taken careful note of Cape May Harbor as a potential refuge. There is, I would have to go back up, but I mentioned Reedy Point. If you, in your mind's eye, remember the photo that I showed from the Coast Pilot Volume 3, Reedy Point, the exit of the C&D Canal. You perhaps can picture that in your mind. Along that shore, there is the so-called Reedy Point Dike. And the Reedy Point Dike is very long. It's about 10, 15 miles long. It has, however, one passage that one could enter. One is not always protected from all wind directions. But what I have done, I've gone in there and out as a demonstration of a potential bailout opportunity. I've also gone in and out of harbor of refuge from various angles, again to show, and I even have dropped anchor there, but not to have an escape, but rather to demonstrate. So I've dropped anchor there, and then took some time to explain the advantages. The disadvantages that I haven't mentioned is I pointed out the Corex line, the territorial sea line, the 3 mile line, and so on. What I did not mention is the Cape May ferry traffic. Every time a ferry leaves from Cape May, its partner leaves from, or sister ship, if you will, leaves from Cape Henlopen, and they go very, very fast. And you really have to know what you're doing to stay out of their way. They will, of course, avoid collision, but they are on a schedule, and they have a job to perform, and I make an effort to stay out of the way. So these are all things that I point out to the student crew, the things that they need to be so no, I was fortunate, knock on wood. I did not have to seek refuge, but I hope I was prepared.
Sounds like it. M. Weidert is asking, how did you incorporate AIS in your class?
Okay, so I have emphasized, I've only mentioned the plotter a few times. I have stressed paper and pencil navigation, the traditional navigation, because we have had a number of, as we all know, plotters and AIS can fail. So that's why we emphasize that. But the navigator has specific assignments, and the navigator is one of a crew of 2 who are on watch. So you have the helmsman for 1 hour, and the navigator then comes up and becomes helmsman, and so they rotate. And the navigator's job includes zooming in, zooming out, checking AIS, and yes, we do use AIS. We show them how to read the AIS to determine closest point of approach, and that is a reporting finding. So they have to report to the captain what they see and what the CPA closest point of approach is. And so having incorporated that, we have AISB, so they can see us and they can hail us, but I can see and have the name, and I can hail the vessel by name and arrange for a safe passage. And we do that, and I've done that with naval vessels off Walpole Island, the rocket launch facility, and at other occasions, and also approaching the Chesapeake Bay entrance there. So yes, we do incorporate it as a matter of course, yes.
Okay. And then Cheryl was curious, do you always go north, or do you ever choose to go south when you circumnavigate?
Okay, yeah, Priscilla and I had a conversation on that. The reason that, we prefer going that way because it supports our training opportunities, and also if things go wrong because of let's say crew learning steps, then we have facilities uh, and from sailmaker to rigger to mechanic that we know all the way from there to all the way up to Summit North Marina.
Oh, I see.
Then, so in a way, I can answer Carol this way. In a way, that's our shakedown cruise from the captain's perspective. By
Right.
that time, we pretty much know that things are working as they're supposed to work, and we are ready to take off. And I mentioned Luz as a potential landfall destination if we had mechanical problems or rigging problems. We have not, knock on wood, during any of my cruises to use that. So that's the preference that we have. And also the Chesapeake Bay traffic is so challenging. By that time, the students have become really alert and know what to look out for. And they are then very good shipmates to have. And so that the captain isn't always almost 24 hours, 24/7 on watch. Having said that, we have had on very rare occasions, actually post-pandemic, we had one case where the weather was such that it would have been unsafe to either go into the Delaware River, Delaware Bay, which are very shallow, by the way, and we make a point of using the auxiliary channel, so not to interfere with the seagoing traffic, because they have enough to worry about. And we do make bridge-to-bridge contact and tell them we have eyes on them and we'll stay in the auxiliary channel. Having said that, if there's strong wind, it's very difficult to stay in the auxiliary channel, and you have crab pots all around in the boundary sections. And so that's one of the reasons. Then the swell, if you have onshore winds, making it safely offshore and go past Hen and Chicken Shoal, the swell is tremendous. And students are not used to it. It would not be safe. So enough said on that. So that one captain, in coordination with Tom Tersey, the head of the school, decided that they could conduct a class going all the way down and back up to Chesapeake Bay, but not out on the ocean. So, so in that sense, they went counterclockwise. They went south on the way. And I know one captain has tried it and was not satisfied. So.
So the swell was why they chose to go south versus.
And the winds, no, swell and the winds. I mean, these are all compounding factors. Yeah.
Okay. One more from Peter Taylor is curious, do you go with yourself and 5 students, or do you do 4 students and have a first mate?
What was the beginning of the question? I got the first mate. Say again.
Just that, is it just you and you have 5 students, or is somebody else also experienced, such as a first mate and then 4 students?
I understand what you're saying. The coastal voyages are only one captain and 5 students, or 4 students for that matter. But the offshore voyages always have 2 professional captains. We have at times given opportunities, and we have taken another Maryland school captain who's trying to build sea time come along, and that fellow captain would then be serve as first mate.
Okay.
Tom Tercy has come along twice as my mate for a number of reasons. He wanted to test something with the boat. We had made changes, but in other case, two students had a medical and family emergency, and so all of a sudden, I was shorthanded, and he came along to make sure that the remaining students still had a successful experience.
Okay. And then it looks like our last question. Oh, we got a couple more. What is the air draft of the school's largest boat?
That was my island packet for 40s, the name Celestial. I sold her 2 years ago. That was with antennas and so on. It was 45 feet.
Oh, okay.
Sure, boat.
Yeah.
45. Wow. It seems like most are around 60. Wow. Huh. Okay, great. And then Davis is curious, how do you deal with the 12-hour watch limit with only one licensed captain?
How do I deal with the 12-hour watch?
Mm-hmm. If you only have one licensed captain on board.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question too. So when the questioner asked, maybe it was Davis, 12 hours, then the questioner means 6 hours on, 6 hours off, if I understand it correctly. So what we do is we take the most experienced student to be a watch captain of the watch that the captain needs to have a shut eye, and if not, then the captain, in this case I myself, I stay on. I just stay on and take little cat naps.
Okay. All right. Yes, I think that's what Davis was getting at. All right. So we've come to the bottom of our list of questions. Yeah, that was really fascinating. I learned so much. So thank you. And I learned how much there's still more things to learn. So I look forward to kind of looking up on the chart all these areas you pointed out, and the coast pilot and the notice to mariners, and doing a better job looking more closely at all those resources. So that's good to see how you use them.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much. Fascinating talk. We loved it. And I don't know, Vicki, did you want to say a few words?
I would just like to thank you, Hans, as well. I just did a DELMARVA last month, and I learned something new from you. Yes, I went with the Navy. I'm volunteering with them, and there were new things I learned from you, and I appreciate your willingness to share it with all of us. So thank you so much, and I hope you'll join us next month. Again, the fourth Monday in the month. And Yvonne, we're going to have somebody from the Nellie Crockett as
that's right.
Guest.
Yes.
So please.
So so let me just tell everyone what's coming up here. We have 25 July is Theodore Parrish, and he's going to tell us about his buy boat, the Nellie Crockett. And then August comes up. We have no meeting in August. So the next speaker will be 26 September. And that's when Captain Jan Miles will be speaking to us. And he's the captain of the Pride of Baltimore, and do some history of, I think, schooners, and then also his amazing career and his time on the schooner itself. And then the 24th of October, we have Captain Duncan Hood will be returning and telling us about his Lake Champlain expedition. So we have some pretty great speakers coming up. And then after that, we'll have our members meeting, and then it's Christmas time. So that's what's up. That's what's on deck.
So I would like to thank you, Vaughn, for arranging all these excellent speakers for us every month. It takes some work, and we really appreciate all your efforts. And you've been doing it for us for a while. So thank you, and thank you again. And hope to see you all next month.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. And we're going to get you that mug. Get you another mug. Or you, Hans, so you can have a handle to hold on to. So for those that didn't know, we had a previous conversation. Hans would like to have another mug because the current one has no handle. So we're going to get them all set up with a new mug.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank
you're
you
welcome.
very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay.